Donald Trump doesn't need to ask for forgiveness, and that's because his party and his voters give him permission every single time. Now, Trump again leaned in, all the way in, playing to the worst fears embedded in this country's history of black and brown people polluting the nation.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous.
Yes, you've heard it before, and Trump is saying it again and again. He's borrowing their language from authoritarians past, specifically Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, using it to demonize immigrants in the present. Now, this is not a slip of a tongue. It's not just loose talk. This time, the rhetoric is accompanied by plans: mass deportations, massive immigration camps, purges of disloyal government workers. And already, the GOP has deployed varying manners and methods of saying that Trump's remarks are really nothing to see, from trying to tell you what he really meant.
They wanted to focus all the Sunday shows, Lawrence, on the word he used, poison. He was just trying to say, we want to keep America, America. We want to build up the border and find out who's coming in and out. And they tried to say that this language was the problem.
To assuring you that he really didn't know what he was saying at all.
I think it's highly unlikely that Donald Trump's ever read Mein Kampf. I think the reality is what we have is that the left continues to attack him for something outrageous he says, but it continues to drive the issue back to border security, which is what he wants to be talking about.
To admitting that, frankly, no one gives a damn.
Are you comfortable with him using words like that?
You know, we're talking about language. I could care less what language people use as long as we get it right. If the only thing you want to talk about on immigration is the way Donald Trump talks, you're missing a lot.
There is a very real political argument that some Republicans are making here, and that is that American voters have so much on their minds that they can't even bother, or they don't have the bandwidth to measure what Trump says versus what they need in their lives right now.
You guys are exhausting. You're exhausting in your obsession with him. The thing is, the normal people aren't obsessed with Trump like you guys are. The normal people care about the fact that they can't afford things. They feel like their freedoms are being taken away.
There is some truth to what she's saying there. For the most part, Republican voters are ignoring Trump's most outrageous campaign promises. And in fact, they may even like it. You see that reflected in the polls. In Iowa, for example, likely Republican caucus goers say that some of Trump's most authoritarian-inspired solutions and statements make them actually more likely to support him. Sweeping raids, giant camps, mass deportations, well, 50% support that. Root out the vermin, 43% support that. Immigrants are poisoning the blood of America, 42%. And you hear it, the adulation of authoritarians, and you hear the adulation that they crave wherever Trump goes.
Thank you very much.
And joining me now is Republican Congresswoman from New York, Nicole Malliotakis. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. Look, I'll start off by simply asking, is Trump right that immigrants are poisoning the blood of this country?
Well, I don't think that's what he was saying. When he said they are poisoning, I think he was talking about the Democratic policies. I think he was talking about the open border policy. And if you look at what our mayor here in New York City is saying, that this migrant crisis is destroying New York City, I think it's pretty much the same thing. What we're trying to say here is that we need to have secure borders. You know what's actually poisoning America is the amount of fentanyl that's coming over our open border. And so this is a really serious issue, and I think that that's what he's talking about, that the open borders are unsafe, that it's unsustainable, and it's bankrupting cities like ours, and we need to address it.
Congresswoman, you're saying that's what you think he's saying, but he was pretty clear. He was saying that the immigrants who are coming in, he says they're They're poisoning
Yes.
the blood of the nation, he says.
Never said
that they're
immigrants are
doing it.
poisoning, though.
He's talking about people coming
I
across
honestly
the
think it
border
was
in the
being.
quote. We just played
yeah,
it.
Yeah, and he said he didn't say the words the immigrants. I think he was talking about the Democratic policies.
He
are
was talking
poison.
about people,
Okay, well look,
not policies.
I don't.
He was talking about people.
Look, I know that some are trying to make it seem like President Trump is anti-immigrant. The reality is he was married to immigrants. He's hired immigrants. I mean, he's not.
He was talking about people coming across the border. He was
Yeah, they're
saying
coming
that
over the border.
He was saying that they were bringing crime. They were bringing violence with them when they came into the country. That is what. So, well, you agree that he's talking about immigrants?
Well, no, but the thing is that our open borders is unsafe and unsustainable. We know that the drug cartels are bringing in and setting up operations selling fentanyl and other drugs to the point where over 100,000 Americans have died. We know that there is crime taking place. And that's not to say that all immigrants are bad. My parents are immigrants. I represent a community full of immigrants. But what I will tell you from the immigrants that I know is that they're very upset by the lack of order that we're seeing at the border.
And look, we've talked to you actually about your background, your immigrant history. I have immigrant history too, so we share that. Exactly, we all do. But let's talk for a second here about the fact that Trump continuously, repeatedly uses this rhetoric that now, maybe you could say the first time he didn't know the references, the parallels to authoritarians. He knows now. Why does he keep saying it over and over again?
Well, look, I just think he's trying to bring attention to the issue.
He's using the rhetoric of authoritarians to bring attention to this issue?
I think what the important thing is we need to pay attention to this issue. I mean, look, let's admit what's going on here in this country. We have drug cartels that are running our southern border. We have the women and children, by the way, who are coming over the border. How many of them are being raped along the journey? Doctors Without Borders even put out a report saying between Colombia and Panama, there were 400 children and women that they treated who were being raped. Every single person coming over that border is paying the drug cartels thousands of dollars to get here. What are they doing with that money? They are in turn selling drugs. The drug cartels, right, are setting up operations here. We know the gangs are here. We know this is all happening. If you talk to the Drug Enforcement Administration, if you talk to law enforcement, it's happening. So, I mean, let's differentiate between legal immigration and illegal immigration and admit that this open border is a major problem for this country. And it's unsustainable. It's costing our taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Here in New York City, we're going bankrupt with the city's doing across the board cuts.
Look, I don't disagree with what you're saying about the policy, and I think that's actually really.
But that's what we have to focus on. We make different.
Look, I think it's really important, the policy that you're talking about. I think you would agree that is probably what lawmakers like you want to focus on. Trump is using the rhetoric of Hitler and Mussolini to make a point about people coming across the border illegally. Don't you think that's a bit of a distraction?
I disagree. I disagree with what you're saying. I just fundamentally disagree. I think what he was saying is that the Democratic policies, the policies of this administration that have allowed millions of people, including, remember, we caught people on the terror watch list. That should be concerning to us in New York City in a post 9/11 world. I mean, we have to be serious about what's going on. And you have 1.7 million people who are completely unaccounted for. And the policies, by the way, of this president, I would argue, of President Biden, are the ones that are anti-immigrant. Let me explain why. We have people who are waiting years in line. They've come the right way. They did everything right. They applied. They've been waiting for years to get an asylum date or whatever. And they're being cut now by these individuals that have paid the drug cartels to come over the southern border. They're prioritizing this administration. The people who have come over the southern border ahead of the people who have been waiting for years. And I know this because I have casework in my office where I'm dealing with this regularly.
Done a lot of work on that. I want to ask you about something else that former President Trump was talking about recently. He said this, take a listen, in New Hampshire.
Vladimir Putin of Russia says that Biden's, and this is a quote, politically motivated persecution of his political rival is very good for Russia because it shows the rottenness of the American political system, which cannot pretend to teach others about democracy.
What do you make of that? Do you agree with Putin's point there that Trump was quoting?
No, I don't even know what it was about, quite frankly. I honestly don't know. You don't play the whole thing, so it's hard for me to say.